How does that change your leadership outlook in terms of leading people?
So what might be absolutely acceptable, the way you phrase certain things or you get them across in a German context or in another international context, might be completely unacceptable here in South Africa, whether you are having really the right leadership approach.
Welcome to the AutoBiography, a video series that shines a spotlight on inspiring leaders. It captures their fascinating stories, their personal journeys, and key leadership lessons that uncovers the secrets to their success. Today, I am privileged to be joined by the head of Audi South Africa, Sascha Sauer. Really good to have you here. You are, CEO of, I think, one of the most popular brands in South Africa, Audi. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
I believe that you are training to be a pilot.
Well, you're well informed. That's almost perfectly right. I was thinking deeply about becoming a pilot and obtaining my private pilot license here in South Africa, which would offer obviously a perfect opportunity. I'm still in the decision-making process, to be honest, and I had a couple of private lessons, let's say, with a friend who owns a little airplane, a van. I'm sure you know that probably.
Yes.
And I was flying it for quite a while, and I did well according to him, and we both survived, so I guess it wasn't all bad. But I'm also aware that obviously if you are making the decision for becoming a private pilot, there is a commitment which goes with it. It's not only the money and the time during the training session, but also afterwards you have a commitment. You need to keep yourself up and running. You need to commit yourself to perform a couple of flights every month at least to train your skills, to keep a certain routine. And you need to renew certain licenses, as you may be aware of. So there's more than just obtaining a license.
So, I mean, I personally, I'm a recreational pilot. Mm-hmm. I got my first license in 2007. Mm-hmm. And that was in an open cockpit microlight.
Wow.
And then progressed in 2013 to get a sports pilot's license, which is different to the PPL, I'm sure you know. Allows you to fly two-seater side-by-side closed cockpit aircraft under 600 kilograms, I believe. So if you're considering it, I'd say go for it.
It's absolutely amazing. It's absolutely exciting. And I was always attached to flying aircrafts, and actually, and we might touch upon that a little bit later probably, but actually some years back, before I even started any of my career steps, let's say, I wanted to become a Lufthansa pilot when I was young and still doing my metric in school, and I applied for becoming a pilot with Lufthansa back then, a commercial pilot obviously. That was the big dream, but I failed, I didn't make it, which was a very tough selection process at that time. And so I had to have a plan B back then to say, okay, if I'm not a pilot, I'm not becoming a pilot, what's next? What am I going to do then?
Yeah. So you do other things, like you're into fitness. What kinds of fitness are you into?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep myself fit and healthy. I like to actually live a healthy lifestyle as much as I can. Sleep enough, catch enough sleep is very important. Drinking enough. Eating well, eating healthy. I try to eat a vegetarian or even vegan whenever I have a chance. Trying to do, cardio fitness. I'm doing Rumble recently, so kind of boxing classes. In
is it
in
called
a fun
Rumble?
way. Yeah, it's called Rumble, but it's basically a boxing class. I do yoga to also stretch myself a little bit and to calm myself down, and especially on Fridays, for example, or over the weekend. Back home in Germany, I like to go skiing also. I'm an avid golfer. I'm an absolute golf fanatic, I would say. I'm sometimes getting crazy about it. So the virus has really bitten me about golf many years back already. But unfortunately, I don't have enough time to play golf. It's a very time-consuming sport. So yeah, I like to stay fit and healthy in many dimensions and many ways. Yeah.
So let's get into where you grew up. I'm assuming Germany is going to be the answer. Where did you grow up? Tell us about that kind of like early phase of your life.
Yeah, you're right. I'm German by origin. I was born in a small, very beautiful city called Fulda, which is about 100 kilometers northeast of Frankfurt, so really in the center of Germany. That's where I was born, that's where I grew up for most of my life. And it's a beautiful city with lovely outdoors, lovely area, and that's where all my friends, friends lived, and where I went to school, and where I completed school with A-level, metric, as you call it here. And then I went on to study, which was not far away, but also not in Fulda directly. So I studied mechanical engineering. That's my profession actually, per definition. I'm a mechanical engineer, which I completed in bare minimum time back then. So I was pretty young when I completed my engineering degree. I was 23 years old. And it was pretty obvious and pretty clear to me that no one is going to hire such a young engineer. And I wanted to use my age advantage back then further. So I went on studying, and I did my MBA, which I did partly in England, in Sheffield, and then also partly in Hong Kong. So I was already traveling back then to Hong Kong, studying there, doing an internship in Hong Kong. So I was quite adventurous back then in that time.
Yeah. And so during your teenage years, I mean, obviously we have dreams. Before you went and studied mechanical engineering, did you have a dream? Did you want to become a mechanical engineer? What was the dream, or was it the Lufthansa pilot?
I was always interested in mechanical stuff, in engines, of course, like a boy. You know, I was probably, with that regard, I was a typical boy and a typical teenager. I looked into Formula One, I looked into race cars, I was into motorcycles, I was looking into, you know, the motorcycle magazines which talked about tuning motorcycles or even cars, you know, all the fancy stuff. So when it comes to this, I would say I was a fairly normal, regular teenager, and in things which rattle, emit a lot of noises, and which stink, I would say, you know, like engines. So I was also fascinated by aircrafts, fighter jets and stuff like that, and I read a lot about that in my earlier days. So before I completed school, it was clear to me I wanted to become a pilot. Also partly because it would enable me to travel the world and see the world. And that always was another exciting element from early days onwards. I always was very curious, and I wanted to explore things, and I wanted to explore the world. And I was watching documentaries about foreign countries, and, you know, the bush and the jungle and all these things, and foreign cities, which I never had a chance as a little teenager or boy to of course travel to. So that was a means for me to say, okay, I've become a pilot. That's highly exciting in terms of operating such a complicated machine and such a complex machine, but also being able to travel the world, to see the world, to explore the world. So that was really my big dream. I then went on and applied with Lufthansa. And the first hurdle was taken in the sense that I was invited actually for interviews and for tests, which they performed in Hamburg in a test center, which was basically only there to test potential applicants for pilot or for becoming a pilot, which was fully equipped with all sorts of high tech back in the day, to test your abilities to manage certain things in parallel, your English, your mathematical skills, your physical fitness, your understanding of physics, of chemistry, all these things. But this test was a couple of days, and I didn't pass it. So it was clear to me that it's going to be a tough test. So of course I had a plan B developed before, and I said, okay, in case I don't pass this test and I can't make it to become a Lufthansa pilot, what would be my plan B? And the plan B was pretty clear for me as well. I wanted to study mechanical engineering. Back then, I must say, the industry was in a bit of a turmoil in Germany and across Europe, and it was a downward trend. It was not so sexy, actually. And many of my family members said, why do you want to study mechanical engineering, and that's not the right time, and where you're going to end up, and where you're going to find work, and you know, they were not really convinced of that being the right thing and the right time to do. But nevertheless, I stuck with it. I was convinced that is what I want to do. This was what was exciting to me. And it was fulfilling a little bit of my passion, so to speak. So I went with it, and I was fairly successful, I guess. And when I completed it, I also realized, okay, it's fascinating, it's wonderful, but there's more to it. I also want to be able to understand and learn more about the skills you need to actually sell the products, which as a mechanical engineer you develop and probably the company produces eventually. So I also wanted to understand more about marketing, sales, the financial part of a company. So that's why I took the next step after finishing my degree and studied did my MBA, which I did in Sheffield, at the Sheffield Business School, and then I went to Hong Kong as well to complete my MBA there, which was a very exciting first experience to really throw yourself into an adventure, into unknown, untapped territory. I have never been so far away from home. I've never been in such a foreign environment like Hong Kong. And we're talking about 1996. In 1997, it was handed back over from the British to China. So that was also a very interesting period where Hong Kong was about to prepare for the handover back to China. So that was when I spent some time in Hong Kong, and I must say that was such a fantastic experience to be so far away from home, but required to organize yourself, and live your life in a very foreign environment. And it was a great experience, which still is impacting me probably until today.
Post your MBA now, you're in your early 20s and you begin living your life. You know, enter your 30s and your thinking starts to evolve. How did your thinking evolve about life, business during that phase after you entered the real world effectively, and you got to fend for yourself? Your parents are no longer there, you can't claim you're a student.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question actually. I've never been looking at it from that perspective, how my thinking actually evolved over that period or in this phase. I would say, generally speaking, I took over responsibility of my own life fairly early, or as soon as I completed my studies at least. Once I earned my first own money, I also made sure that I started saving money from that point onwards. So what might confuse many people to think about, already your retirement when you're just starting your career by the age of 26, thinking about your retirement and your pension funds already and how to save money and what amount of money you could potentially put aside and where to invest it and how to do that. But that's what I did right away in the early days. So by the age of 26, I started, saving a little bit here and there. You start off, little by little. That's certainly one thing which was a very decisive element already for me to take over responsibility.
Thinking about the future effectively, which young people often don't do.
Exactly. I was thinking about my own future very early on. Probably too early, I'm not sure. Maybe you're also losing out on some other elements of your early life. But that's what I did and what I committed to. But still, I would say, of course, it was still everything was very light. Everything felt very light. You went to work and everything was still a little bit more on the fun side. You didn't have much of a burden on you. You didn't have, the feeling that you are responsible for a family, for example. You need to take care of a family. I still don't have kids. I've not been married until this point in time. So I think there is this lightness in this phase of your life and your career, your early career, which changes over time, and into your 40s as you progress your career. You're taking over more responsibility also in terms of your job. You're taking over more responsibility in terms of, in our business, definitely volumes. You're taking more responsibility in terms of potential profit, impact on the company. You're taking over more responsibility for teams and others. You lead others, you manage others, and that makes things less light, if I may call it that way, and you're gonna be soaked into more of a responsibility. and you're going to feel that burden also eventually. And then I must say also, our society is very much performance driven. So you're also going to talk always about KPIs, achieving KPIs, targets, your management by objectives, agreements every year. Every year thereafter, you're going to be checked against that objective, you know. Have you achieved it? Have you not achieved it? To what degree have you achieved it? You know, what was your performance like? So you're always going to be driven by that kind of a environment, yeah? And that forms you to a certain degree, and that forms your thinking, and that forms your focus probably likewise, you know.
So if you had to now, you've lived your life up to this point, you've learned all those lessons, you've taken on more responsibility, matured. Seems to me like you matured rather early, which is a good thing, I think, you know, less reckless. But if you could time travel and you could go back to your younger self and give yourself advice, what would that advice be?
I would probably have advised that younger self to say, take a year off. Do not go straight from university, finishing your studies, into your professional life. Or if it may be 2 years, even for that matter, take that time and travel the world. Yeah? You don't need much money necessarily. You can always find a little bit of work, also making something aside, and finance yourself, you know, for a year. Learn different cultures, learn different countries, and throw yourself into that kind of an adventure and mature through that kind of an experience. Make friends, get to know other people, build relationships all around the world, and, you know, produce fascinating memories. And that's something which I didn't do. I was always driven by, okay, you're going to study, you're going to work, you're going to progress your career, you're going to do A, B, and C, you have a fallback plan, etc. I never had that typical student life either, where people were partying hard, you know, going out until late in the morning, coming back, then, you know, not being able to attend school or classes because they were, you know, all hungover. That's not what I did, unfortunately, to a certain degree, because I think it's also part of that life.
Yes.
Yeah? You need to do that also for, you know, for a bit at least, and in moderation, obviously. But I was always very, very focused on, you know, one step after the other, and not allowing myself to, also enjoying a little bit the things right and left of my straight line.
On this journey of yours, have you had heroes or mentors along the way? And more importantly, what have they taught you?
Per definition, I would say I never had really a mentor to ask someone for mentoring me. That never happened. I would probably mention my father as being a very influential person on me and on my development. And my father is always about very much the positive side of life. No matter what life throws at you, no matter how negative things may look and how devastating they may look at first, he always finds some aspect of it or one angle to it to say, but look, you know, this is what you can learn out of it, or you always need to look ahead. You always need to, okay, you know, this is not the end of the world, and you can always, you know, progress and look at it positively and remain positive and maintain a positive outlook in life. And that's something which I really learned from him and which I really admire. I must say that he always, no matter what it is, he always has a positive attitude to it. I had a couple of, you know, superiors and bosses, if you like, which had a little bit of an influence on me, but I would not necessarily say they were a mentor. But I strongly believe that there is a lot of things you can learn from everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose including what you don't want to be. You know, I've learned that over my career. I've sometimes had a boss where you know, I have the opinion of, I don't want to be like that. So you know what not to do in many ways. That resonates with me. I think that's quite a thing that you go through, is you learn little things out of many people, I suppose is what you're saying.
Yeah. No, absolutely true, and I can absolutely attest to that. Of course, over 26 years career now with an Audi in different positions and in different countries. Meanwhile, there are always people who you work with which are not necessarily a role model in a positive sense, but maybe a role model in a negative sense, and you come to the conclusion to what you said exactly. That you don't want to be like that, and you don't want to imitate that behavior or that style, that leadership style. and that you would probably focus on different things if you had the opportunity in the same situation. And that's definitely a learning as well. Yeah.
So let's get on to your journey to CEO of Audi South Africa. Tell me how that started. How did you get into it?
Well, I was lucky to be given the chance to always work internationally, and that was actually also very important to me, and probably is consistent in the way that I always wanted to travel the world. Audi, luckily, and this organization has given me this opportunity over the career I've been progressing so far. I've always worked with international context, with markets all over the world, with partners all over the world.
Part of Audi?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So was Audi your first job?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
I was basically, well, in modern world you would probably say almost headhunted, and during what they called a career day back in the day. So it was like a conference where young students would probably apply for companies who exhibited the company in a big hotel back in the day. And they basically catched me there and said, okay, we invite you for an interview. And when they did so, they invited me for an interview actually in the controlling department. And I thought like, hold on a moment, I'm not a finance guy, I'm a technical guy, right? So I called them up and say, are you sure? I received that application and I noticed that this is within your controlling department. Are you sure about that? And they said, yes, we're absolutely sure. That's all fine. You know, you'll be good. So I went there and we had an interview with a very interesting person who then became my first boss. And he convinced me in a very self-confident way that this was the best company to work with, and that I was the perfect candidate for this position. And actually what attracted the attention of Audi was being in Hong Kong for a while, and they were searching for a controller looking after the Southeast Asian region. Among others, there was also Hong Kong, which need to be looked after. That actually attracted them to my CV and said, this is the one, and we want him. And so I started in the finance controlling and sales controlling, to be very precise, and I worked with international markets. We were all about pricing cars, calculating cars, positioning cars versus the competition in various markets, Thailand, Hong Kong, Sri Lanka, all the little markets I started with. Yeah, I progressed from there on, and I always had the opportunity to be able to work and think internationally and in a more globalized context, let's say. Back to your question, how did it come about that I ended up here in South Africa? The role I had before that was the role of the regional director for the African continent and Middle East. And I was working with the colleagues here already back in the day for 2 years before my predecessor went back to Germany. And then I was very close to the business, obviously, working with South Africa already for a while, knowing the people, knowing the processes. You know, I was always in love with South Africa for a long time already. And of course, I threw my hat into the ring and said, you know, I want to do that. I want to go there. I want to be the successor for Trevor Hill, who used to be my predecessor. And my boss in Germany said, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, so luckily it was decided very quickly. Well, I happen to be his successor now, and I came here 2.5 years back.
So in between all of that, you worked in Vietnam, I believe, and India, is it?
That's not exactly right. What I was working with India, yeah, specifically, and I was working with Vietnam, always in a similar function as the head of a region. Yeah,
but you would have to travel there nonetheless.
Exactly.
Yes.
I was extensively traveling, and actually I was the one who set up the business from the German side in India for the brand. Yeah, so when we started the business and when we entered the market the first time, that was basically done by my team and myself, coordinated from Germany, with then the support later on also with, you know, setting up the first offices and employing the first people in India. So we were extensively traveling India and across India. And likewise, I set up with my team the business for Audi in Vietnam. So we appointed the first partners there. I inaugurated the first showroom, I remember that still. So I was responsible for the Southeast Asian region before that. And I traveled to Philippines, to Indonesia, to Malaysia, to Singapore.
Which I suppose fulfilled that dream of travel to a certain degree of being a pilot. It's almost that you didn't do the pilot thing, but you had another career that kind of fulfilled that a little bit.
Exactly, and that's what I feel is somehow consistently the urge in me to, to have this possibility to be internationally connected, to travel, to see the world. But there is always this notion of curiosity behind it, I guess, because I'm a very curious person. I'm to a certain degree adventurous, and I'm not shy of trying out new things and testing the water, so to speak, pioneering certain things. They might go wrong, and you might not be successful, but at least I have that urge to test it and to try it. And I think that's a big motivator and an intrinsic force which really drives me forward.
So you've worked across different cultures. Germany, obviously you grew up there, so you intimately understand German culture. You've worked in India through travel, in Vietnam, in Hong Kong, now in South Africa. You've studied in England, so you've experienced that culture. From a leadership point of view, how does that change your leadership outlook in terms of leading people?
Yeah, another very interesting question. I believe that probably what you gain out of that possibility or these possibilities which I had is mainly the diversity aspect. And it also means that you need to adapt quite flexibly to different cultures, to different setups, and working with different teams and different people. You can't, in my belief, there is no such thing like one size fits all. You need to allow yourself also to say, I need to lead differently today in this setup, in this environment, with this team around me, than I probably needed to lead the other day or in another context. So I don't believe that necessarily there's only one kind of fixed approach or construct which defines this is the leadership style and you must apply that and then you're going to be successful. There's not such things like a recipe, a cookbook recipe.
That's what makes leadership interesting, right?
Exactly. You need to be highly adaptable, you need to be flexible, and you need to have antennas. I had my lessons here as well when I came to South Africa. I thought at first it's easy, South Africans are warm people, they're very welcoming.
We are.
They're very, very forgiving, but I must say my learning is they're also very sensitive people, and that's probably true to the tradition and the history of this country with apartheid and all what happened. So what might be absolutely acceptable, the way you phrase certain things or you get them across in a German context or in another international context, might be completely unacceptable here in South Africa, and you might hurt someone's feelings and without even noticing that. Yeah. So you need to be able to realize that, and luckily for me I got feedback early on from my team and around people around me to say, listen, this is a no-go, you can't do that and you must not do that again, or you must adjust yourself. And that is something you need to be mindful of these things, and there's never ever a situation in my mind which is really easy, and you need to be always mindful of certain traps and double check whether you're having really the right leadership approach or not.
I suppose that's the ultimate definition of self-awareness. For me, self-awareness is understanding moment by moment what your impact is on the environment around you. Self-awareness has got very little to do with yourself, but more your impact on the environment around you. Would that resonate with the summary that you gave?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe myself as the perfect self-aware person. Certainly I'm not anywhere close to that, but it's true what you're saying as a summary. That's actually the essence of it, I would say. Yeah, that would be the ideal you're gonna try to achieve. But I'm just saying, I had my lessons as well. It's, I'm far from being a perfect manager and leader, but I think that is what changes and what evolves over time, especially if you're working in a very international environment and in a very diverse environment. Even in Germany, when I was working there back in the day, being responsible for Southeast Asia, I had a team which had a Japanese, half a Japanese person with half Japanese background, and we had an Indian colleague there. We had someone from South Africa actually in my team back then. We had some typical German people there. I had someone with Hungarian roots in my team. I had ladies and I had gentlemen in the team. So we were fairly diverse already in Germany, and I highly appreciated that, because I strongly believe that this really contributes to finding best solutions and best approaches and strategies.
I like that term antennas that you used. You know, I might use that in the future. Antennas, I like it, because it's almost like your self-awareness antennas. They've got to be constantly fluttering to understand and get that feedback and be sensitive to that feedback. So what's your proudest achievement at Audi so far?
There are many nice memories and many nice moments. I would say what makes me proud is success, generally speaking, and very broadly. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's my success. I know that I'm only part of a team as well, and it's always a team approach and a team success. We win together, we lose together. That's something which we all very aware and which we share in my team. I think everyone shares that idea. We refer to ourselves as being Audianers. Yeah, we call ourselves Audianers in the office. The proudest thing, I think, is to be able to have the entire team aligned for a strategy and for the future of a brand in a market like South Africa. And I think we are deeply aligned, we are very well aligned in what we want to achieve, how we want to go about it. And that in itself is already an achievement, to feel that power, that energy, when a number of people, a bunch of people really try for the same and strive for the same ambition and for the same target. And that already in itself is an achievement. Without, you know, we're not sure whether we're ever going to be successful on our journey. But I think already having achieved this excitement to see the future of the brand in the same way and believing in that, that's a big achievement already. And I'm fairly proud of that, yeah.
So if that is kind of on the proud end of the scale, or you love to see happen, what has been your biggest challenge on the other end?
Well, I would say, broadly speaking, also the biggest challenges nowadays in our industry and in modern times are the constraints we are in. Sometimes they are technical constraints, sometimes they are logistical constraints, sometimes they are production constraints, and sometimes there are compliancy and regulatory constraints. Being part of a very big international group, of course it goes without saying that we have a solid corporate governance, a set of rules, compliance, code of conduct, all these things. And you need to obey to them at any given time, and you need to stick to them, and you need to make them your daily routine, and make them become your daily routine and form part of your decision making. But that limits also a little bit the entrepreneurial freedom at times and the entrepreneurial spirit. And that is a big challenge at times, to juggle all these balls, the obvious constraints of production limitations, of logistical challenges, of let's say regulatory problems, of taxation systems which are not in place yet, for example, and to juggle all these balls and still maintain your direction and, you know, keep a positive outlook for the strategy and maintain steering the ship in the right direction. That is a big challenge.
I suppose that's the juxtaposition between corporate organizations and entrepreneurial organizations, because you've got to overcome those corporate structures and make them work for you. Whereas in entrepreneurial businesses like startups, it's almost like risking the whole kitchen, and you can do that if you like. Whereas here, you've got to kind of stick to those corporate structures, and that means you've got to adapt rather than the system adapt to you. So is that the right analogy?
Very much so. I believe you can never fight the system, and you better not fight the system. And you have to adapt to the system. Unfortunately, you will not be able. I will not be able to change the system. Yes. Right? I can make little changes within my given area of responsibility, and I take that responsibility. But I cannot change the system. And as I said, we're part of a big corporate organization, and that is very different to a startup setup where you are a one-man show, or with some buddies you're operating out of a garage. Your decision making is way different,
yes,
and way quicker probably at times, as opposed to what we have to go through typically when we make decisions, how we document decisions, how we justify certain decisions.
The system work for you, because that's effectively what you're describing, is making the system work for you. So let's talk about Audi for a few minutes. What is Audi's plan in 2023? It must be quite difficult for Audi to have this EV outlook and not have the support or government regulation or framework, for lack of a better word, but still bringing cars into the country and selling. So what is your outlook for 23 and 24, given those constraints and the vision for Audi?
First of all, I strongly believe in, let's say, the transformation of our industry, and that it has to transform also, given what happens around us in our environment, global warming, given the fact that also this government here in South Africa has signed up for the Paris Climate Agreement, and has taken some, let's say, given some commitment in signing this agreement. I believe that the industry has to transform. Audi on a global level has announced that from 2026 onwards, each and every new car launch will be an all-electric car launch only. So from 2026 onwards in this country and for the Audi brand, we will see an acceleration of more and more EV cars being introduced until probably 2033, 2034. The entire portfolio will transform into EV only. And likewise, step by step, gradually over the same period of time until 2033, 2034, we will see the ICE combustion engine cars, reducing over time. So the question is, and the interesting question is, where is that tipping point going to take place? Where will the combustion engine sales and the EV number of sales cross each other? Or from which moment onwards will the EV cars take over the combustion engine cars? And I think that brings us back to the question, what is the regulatory framework for that, and what is the government probably going to do about incentivizing and supporting that transformation, which is important for the government as well to achieve their Paris Climate Agreement targets, CO2 emission targets. As of now, and you said that very rightly, there isn't any support in that. In fact, we are actually getting penalized by the way EV cars are being taxed. We incur a 25% import duty on EV cars, opposed to preferential rates of 18% for most products coming out of Europe. So there's a 7 percentage point difference already on that level against an EV car. So as of now, there is no incentive scheme in place, but no matter what, we as an industry, we also have to take our responsibility, and we can't wait for the government to take decisions, so we have to move ahead. There are a lot of private players in this game already, I would say, in the broader scheme of things. We have partnered with Critcars and Rubicon, for example, to also work on the charging infrastructure, the public charging infrastructure, to progress that and to show our commitment on the one hand side, of course, but also to enable the EV adoption in this country. And I'm fairly confident that EV cars are going to take over, because whoever has driven an EV car can report back and probably attest to the fact that it's still a lot of fun to driving these cars. There's a lot of performance you get out of these cars, and being a mechanical engineer, and I love engines and everything which rattles and stinks, but still I think that these cars can really give you so much excitement and so much performance, so you don't sacrifice anything in terms of performance, at least. What we have to work on definitely as an industry is, getting the prices right, getting the right products, getting also the right products in the lower end of the market in terms of pricing, affordability, accessibility, and we have to obviously also discuss within our group, and that's where the big benefit lies in our group, What role can Volkswagen play here? Volkswagen is a big player in this country and produces cars here. So when is Volkswagen going to produce an EV car in this country? That is going to contribute a lot to the economy, to job creation again, and to a better environment, hopefully, for everyone in the future.
So your partnership with Grid Cars and Rubicon, I've charged my EV at your 150 kilowatt charger in just before Colesberg. And unfortunately, my car is still the first generation EV, and maximum charge capacity is 100 kilowatts at any time. So I couldn't make use of your 150 kilowatt charger at that charging station, but I could get to 100, versus before I could only do up to 60 kilowatts maximum, whereas I could use the 100, which cut down my travel time quite a lot, just having that extra 40 kilowatts, to be able to charge. As a matter of fact, I went into the coffee shop, stood in the queue, got a cup of coffee. By the time I went out, I stood in the sun a little bit, I had a couple of sips of my coffee, and my car was charged. I left, and it was a good experience because the charger was so fast. So what is Audi's strategy with the charging infrastructure? Where do you see the pitfalls, and what problems are you trying to solve? Because let's be honest, 80% of charging of EVs happen at home. I don't charge my car at public chargers very often, only when I do long trips. Last night my car was on 60%. By the time I got home, I charged it overnight. Because of load shedding, I could only get about 20–25% into the car, so I left this morning with about 85% on the car, and got to the office here with 70%. So I'm okay, and load shedding doesn't affect my car at home very much. So I suppose the question is twofold. One, people don't use the public chargers as often as they would use public filling stations because you're charging at home. So how does Audi see that? What are the challenges to overcome in the charging infrastructure still, do you think?
First of all, I would like to probably take this opportunity to mention that the infrastructure in this country is actually way better than most people will think it is. Yeah? There are more than 300 charging sites already available in this country as we speak, and they are growing every day. We are busy with thinking about what we call a phase 3 rollout of another investment into charging infrastructure, talking public charging infrastructure, for this year. So this is currently in the making. So we're going to roll out another few chargers and adding to the entire network. And there will be chargers for every brand, and they will be accessible for everyone. I think when it comes to the obstacles, very obviously there's load shedding, which is a big obstacle, but also it's the power which the grid can supply on a micro level in a grid. So it doesn't help us much to put 100 or 150 kilowatt chargers up everywhere, because they cannot be fed and supplied from the local grid. And that's a big challenge, a technical challenge. So we have also supplied one battery pack to one of the chargers, for example, which is an 80 kilowatt charger, just to up the possibility in that area, because the area was good for only, I think it was 40 or something like that as a maximum. But it was clear for us, when people travel a long distance, they want to charge quick, like you described it now. The time it takes to, buy a coffee, consume a coffee, and then you want to be up and ready to go again. That's probably around 30 minutes, let's say. That's probably the ideal time you're going to look for. For that, you need 100 to 150 kilowatt chargers normally. But the big challenge is that, you don't find these places in South Africa easily. So we will have to think about supporting these chargers with battery packs. We will be looking into supporting certain places with solar panels and investing into supporting them with investments in solar panel infrastructure. These are the challenges, but I would say as we speak there are chargers along all major routes in the country already. They range from, let's say, at least 80 kilowatt all the way up to 150. We have now installed recently a 200 kilowatt charger at the Mall of Africa.
At the Mall of Africa.
Which also is supported by solar, of course. So these are super fast chargers, but like you said, they are future-proof in the sense that most cars in the market as of now would not be able to even utilize the full capacity of that charger. But we will see more and more products coming into the market which eventually are able to be, charged at 200 kilowatt or even above that limit. So, which of course will bring down the charging times dramatically. And this is something we're working towards, and first expanding the network and targeting a little bit that myth around that there is no charging in South Africa, which is simply not true. And then also working on the speed of charging.
So I mean that's very exciting because a couple of brands have gotten involved in the charging infrastructure over time, and I'm super excited that Audi's now got involved in the charging network. So I've never had an issue charging my car at any time, because usually there's another charger available and that's got power. So
I think you're the perfect example of what you said, and your own experience proves that. I mean, 80%, roughly 80%, 85% of charging happens at home. That's what we know from market research in different countries, and South Africa is not much different to other countries when it comes to that. And I think it will change the lifestyle simply. You need to understand as an EV customer or potential customer that your lifestyle is going to change. You don't have to go to a petrol or gas station anymore to fill your car. What you do is the normal thing you do anyway when you come home. You plug in your iPad, you plug in your iPhone, you plug in whatever, your laptop computer, and you simply know that they're going to be charged the next morning. No matter load shedding kicks in or not, you know they're going to be charged. The same thing is going to happen with an EV car. You're going to plug it in once you arrive back home, and you get home with 70%, 80%, 60% of charge still. The next morning you're going to have plenty of range to go another 300 or 400 kilometer. And as long as you don't tell me that you travel 400 kilometers every day, I would say, then still an EV car could be for you,
It could be, because I mean you still got the 200 kilowatt charger.
And I may just want to add one point. We always tend to think, and South Africans still tend to think, EV car being an addition to the problem. Talking load shedding, talking problems at home, no electricity. I think it's going to be very exciting the moment you're talking about the bidirectional charging possibility of an EV car, because suddenly you've got a car standing in your garage at home, which has a, let's say, 100 kilowatt hour battery in it, which could power your home for I don't know how long. If it was
100 kilowatts would power my home for 5 days, 6 days.
Yeah. So I think that is something which we as an industry really need to think about and need to work towards. And suddenly bidirectional charging and EV cars become, especially in the South African context, part of a solution rather than being viewed as part of a problem.
I wasn't planning on asking you this question, but maybe you've got an opinion on it. I've read that many OEMs are not in favor of bidirectional charging because of the cycling of the battery and the deterioration of the battery, given that the car now, what happens to its warranty, what happens to its lifespan. And you might not have an answer to that. What are your thoughts on bidirectional charging and the effect on the car?
Well, I think, George, that this is mainly a question of how this battery or how this product is being developed and laid out for. If it was laid out for properly bidirectional charging and developed for that and quality tested for that, then I think there wouldn't be any issue with it. I think there's always this thinking, you take a current product and then you plug it in at home and you let it charge and discharge, which doesn't work anyway at the moment, but I think then you would probably have a problem, because the battery is a wear and tear item. Let's face it, like we know it from our laptop, we know it from our phone. Over the years, the capacity is going to go down.
Yes.
And the more you stress the battery in charging, discharging, of course, it's going to wear faster. But still, I think we need to put that also into context. Our company gives you an 8-year warranty on the battery when you buy an EV car. And first, research and analysis shows, meanwhile, since we've sold a couple of thousand cars around the world and they're in use for a couple of years meanwhile, that actually the 8 years is a very confident statement. Mostly the battery will last longer.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to this, and when we assume that the product is designed for doing exactly what we're discussing here, bidirectional charging, then there wouldn't be any issue, I believe. Yeah. So I think everything can be achieved. It's a mechanical engineering or an engineering question now to make that happen. But I think it can be designed such way that it's going to support and then it's going to be the right solution to a problem specific to South Africa. And that could be a big game changer almost in a market like South Africa.
I'd love the bidirectional charging.
Because you would not have to suddenly necessarily invest into
batteries.
Your inverter and a battery separately in your home, right?
Exactly.
Where probably you also don't know where to put it in the first place, not to mention, you know, the investment which comes with it, and the money.
Exactly, exactly. So let's talk about your first responder program, and Audi kind of being the first to market with first responder. What is first responder about, and why do you do it?
Yeah, that was an interesting point we stumbled across while we discussed our initial launch of EV cars. During that journey, we discussed in the team, certain scenarios, and we also asked ourselves the question, okay, what happens if such a car has an accident in South Africa? We're selling a product which can get involved into an accident, and who actually knows how to handle such a car? Are these people actually trained for that? And when we started investigating that a little bit further, we realized that no one knew anything about these cars, that no one has ever thought about training paramedics, first responders, firefighters, how to deal with, an electric car, what to do, where to search for the emergency brake, etc., the circuit breaker, how to deal with that, and how to, approach a car in a safe way also for them to deal with the situation in a correct and in a safe way. So we reached out to, let's say, the first responders, and we finally had some 70 people trained, part of a train-the-trainer concept. So they went back into their local areas and trained themselves again, their peer group. And that was a very successful cooperation. So they went through a whole training session in our training academy up in Centurion. Yeah, I think that was very well received, and it's part of our social responsibility also to make sure we're selling products. We want to, everyone operate them safely, and if something goes wrong, in case of an accident, then we still need to make sure that everyone who deals with that situation can deal with the car and the product in a safe manner and is not put at risk.
EV, I believe, puts out 400 volts. And if somebody touches the wrong place on the car, especially in a wreck, you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah, definitely so.
So well done to Audi. I think that's a brilliant initiative. Let's kind of change gears a little bit and talk about Sascha as CEO and stakeholder management. Quite often as a CEO, you sit in the center of the shareholder, the corporate entity, your staff, your teams, your customers, your suppliers. You sit in the center of all that, and everybody's pulling on your time, pulling on needs and wants that they want. How do you manage that varying stakeholder pool on your attention and then still help make the business successful?
I think you have to simply accept that. You cannot fight it again. You cannot say, okay, I want that to stop, I want that to go away. You're in it, you have committed to a job. And I think you have to address that in a professional manner and to simply accept it. And I think that is the first step. You need to accept it. You need to be aware of it, first thing. Second thing, once you're aware, you need to accept it. Third thing is then to find a way how in this situation you best balance your energy, your time, and your personal resource to address all the different needs and wants and requirements from all sorts of stakeholders around you. And you need to be able then to prioritize, obviously. Sometimes certain things are more important than others, and you go for the more important ones and the more urgent ones obviously first, before you then address the less important and less urgent ones. So I think there's no real recipe. I think what is important though is that you maintain a good energy level, that you maintain, and that is part of what I said probably at the very beginning. I like to be fit. I'd like to live a healthy lifestyle as much as I can, given the environment at the moment I'm in, which means for me personally, I need to sleep enough. I'm not the one who gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can tell you that. I'm not saying that I'm the superhero who gets up 4 o'clock every morning and then runs 10K first of all and has a cold shower at 6 o'clock and then, I'm not that type of person for sure. I like to sleep enough. Enough for me means 7 to 8 hours. I need enough sleep. then I'm energized, I'm fit for the day. I like to eat well. I like to stay away from cigarettes and stuff. I never smoked. I drink, of course, alcohol in moderation because I love wine, and I'm in a perfect environment in South Africa for that. And I like to do sports. So to keep to keep your mind relaxed and your body fit, you need to find that balance. Otherwise, you're going to be drained very quickly in such a job.
So then that leads me to your routine. Do you have one? Do you structure your day? How much structure is there? And how flexible is it? Now, what is a day in the life of Sascha, the CEO of Audi?
Well, my day typically would start around, I would say, 6:30. Yeah, that's when I get up typically, so not super early. My typical routine would be I take a shower, first of all, after getting out of bed. And then, of course, I need a cup of coffee. That's really part of my routine. I can't get going in the morning without a cup of coffee. So that's probably my addiction, caffeine. Yeah, I need a lot of coffee during the day. I drink 3-4 cups a day. And first things in the morning is a cup of coffee. And I have breakfast every morning. I can't leave the house without having breakfast. Typically, I have a bowl of muesli. And then I'm good to go. Yeah, but that is all about it when it comes to the morning routine already. The structure is fairly straightforward, I reckon, because once I reach the office between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, I might take the first call already at home. If it's an early call, like this morning before I came here, we had already a call with our finance director, so I might take that at home. And then typically I'm in the office. I like to work from the office. I don't like working from home, personally. I hate it. Yeah, I like to be in the office. I've got a proper chair, I've got a proper desk, I've got a printer.
You're not the first person in that chair to say that exact thing, and I agree with you.
Yeah, so I really can't work from home. That's for me a no-go. I don't like it, and I'm not the one who favors that for me personally. So I come to the office, let's say anytime between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning. And then the day is typically planned through, with meetings, a lot of meetings typically, but I also try to always block off a little bit of time here and there in between meetings if I can, to also look after emails, working on presentations, giving feedback, receiving feedback from my team from others. I like to walk around in the office to talk to people a lot, which might annoy some of my colleagues at times probably. But I'm not sitting in my office the whole day waiting for people to come to me. I walk actively, through the office. I have a chat here, I have a chat there, and I get updates here and there. And my door is literally, my office door is literally always open. So also anyone can pop into the office at any given time and have a chat with me. But it's basically meetings the whole day until around 5, I would say, typically. And then, typically it starts, you follow up on your emails, you do your communications, you do your presentations and whatever paperwork you have to do. And typically I would leave office around, last night I left 6:30, sometimes I leave at 7. So this is typically the time when I leave. I come back home. Typically I still follow up on some emails later from home. And yeah, I try to avoid doing emails or too much of email stuff over the weekend, but there's always, let's say, the need to read a little bit, sometimes to prepare for a Monday meeting already on the weekend. That's also part of a routine, to look and check your emails on a Sunday, for example, Sunday afternoon, to see is there something popping up, what's the first thing happening on a Monday morning, get a little bit prepared for that.
What are you reading at the moment?
Yeah, I'm reading not as much as I would like to read. That's also, unfortunately, the reality of the current situation I'm in, or the current job I'm taking responsibility for. But I'm reading a book called Atomic Habits from a gentleman by the name James Clear. I'm about halfway through, I would say. It's a 200, I don't know, it's 280 pages or something, if I'm not mistaken. I'm somewhere around 100 pages into the book. It's quite interesting, especially also the introductory story, which introduces the the author himself is quite interesting and captured quite my attention. So that's what I'm reading at the moment, but I'm not a real bookworm, I must say. I'm not reading book after book and after book, but that's what I'm having next to my bed at the moment.
That's uncanny, because I'm reading the same book at the moment, Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm also about halfway through.
Okay.
I've taken a lot of lessons, chew the meat, spit out the bones from the book so far. So very finally, what would be leadership advice you would give, given your experience, your current role, and maturing in your role? What would the leadership advice be to any young leaders out there that might be watching this video and thinking to themselves, I want to be like Sascha? What would your leadership advice be?
Well, to hold true to what I said earlier, I would probably say there is not a single piece of advice, because there's no cookbook recipe which you just need to follow and you become a perfect leader. It's all about adaptability, flexibility, mindfulness, and probably also a good portion of self-awareness. But one thing for sure, I would probably advise everyone who talks about being a leader or wanting to become a leader. I think the thing which sets a leader apart from a manager, in my mind, is very much the fact that a leader should always be concerned, and far more concerned, about the future. He should be operating in the future. All his thinking should be far more centered around the future than about the current situation and managing problems on the day, because that's management. The leader needs to lead into the future, needs to lead and guide a team towards the future, ensure that the company is future-proof, that the right decisions are being taken today, and that the whole team is on that journey together as a team towards the future. So the leadership for me is very much about being concerned about a future and the future, and to manage this future.
That's been absolutely fascinating, Sascha. Thank you so much for being here, and I've really enjoyed the chat. And keep doing what you're doing at Audi, and I'm pretty sure Audi is going to go from strength to strength. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure chatting to you, and I enjoyed it likewise. Thank you very much.